Yo, what the fuck is up? Damn, we out of 2020, 2024, baby, let's go. Be honest, I got Jamie to take you to hobby, yo. Let's rip it up, I know wrong. Woke up this morning thinking I've got to pray. Many who wonder why I still can't find my way. All the time, now no rescue. I got to wait someone to find an excuse. Till they are down, every other thing I can roll.
Yeah. Oh, shit. Yeah. What's going on? What's happening? What's going on out there, YouTube? What's going on, world? Welcome to this fine rainy Monday edition of BS with Hannas. That's me. I'm Nikki Hannas. That's what I call myself on the internet anyway. You can find this on YouTube. I'll do the plugs later. Fuck it. The whole premise of this show, BS with Hannas. Good morning, Hannas. I like to get out here in the morning, talk a little bit on YouTube, talking to the void. Got a couple friends that hang out here in the chat. Hopefully, new friends making their way in here. Yeah, I like to wake up and I take a nice walk. I like to read some good stuff, come out here and talk to the people. When I'm done here, I'll go lift some weights and then go to work, handle my business. In other words, yeah, man, it's a good thing. It's a good thing, you know. Fucking, it's a Monday, so we're all back to the week. Had a great weekend. I've been having very nice weekends recently, which is fucking great. You know, I think about it, right? Like, the premise of this, I'm just a dude out here getting after it, man. And I always get kind of tripped up in the meta analysis of my own endeavors sometimes. I'm a musician, I make music. I'm attempting to become, slowly grinding away and becoming a speaker, slowly grinding away and becoming more of a writer, you know? And all those things are good things. All of those things are good things to do, both for oneself and for one's neighbors, as it is. In some sense, they are a service. Because if everyone stopped writing, if everyone stopped talking, if everybody stopped singing, then we no longer have songs to enjoy, concerts to enjoy, things to listen to stimulate us or entertain us or whatever, nothing to read, nothing to captivate. So we all got to do our parts. And I'm inclined, so fucking here we are, dude. I like to get on here and talk a little bit. Hopefully, share some things I found useful and unuseful, good and bad, whatever. Try and contribute how I can, man. And on a Monday, everyone's tripping. On a rainy Monday, especially, everyone's tripping. They call it Stormy Monday, as Albert King once sang to me. But Tuesday's just the same. Nah, man, we out here on a Monday fucking getting ready to get after it, dude. And what I'm thinking today is that, think about my message again. I think I'm in like 60 some episodes of this. So it's like, what's the point? What is my message? I'm just a dude out here getting after it. And the news is crazy. The world's crazy. And as I do this more and more often, and I can kind of reduce all the shit that I talk into something, I'm very interested in the outside world as well as the inside world. So as I work to figure out what my message is, because not having a clear message is the first rule of writing. It's the first rule of any type of engagement. What's your message? What are you putting out there? And I guess what I'm doing, what I've learned, what my experience has been, largely in part from getting sober. Getting sober to me is the biggest thing. So I encourage that for most people, generally, even though most people aren't as wantonly irresponsible and reckless if they indulge like I was. But that being an aside, because nobody likes the guy who preaches sobriety. It is superior. I found it to be superior. But once I got over that hill, it's really like life is seeming to me to be a mitigation of the outside forces and the inside forces. What I'm learning as I dwell on these things is that there's very little I can do about the outside forces as it is. Besides observe, besides take note of, besides pay attention to, But even then, what do those things do to the inside world? That's the question it begs, By observing, what do you get? What does one get from a sick sense of voyeurism as Rome burns and we're just watching on the sidelines? What do you get from that? What service is that to you? Should you turn away, or is that a dereliction of duty on some level? If I'm taking notes of Rome burning, metaphorically, of course, why am I taking notes? Am I going to read them later? Am I going to condense them into something of use, something of service? Or am I just, is it a masturbatory exercise of just, well, look at this. Isn't that interesting? If I'm paying attention to the burning of Rome, metaphorically, why? If I'm paying, that implies a cost. That implies some type of exchange. You pay attention to something, you give your attention to something, in some level, you enter a relation with it. So to what extent is that even useful? Or do we turn our heads and not pay attention to it? These are just questions. I don't have a fucking straight up takeaway, because the outside world, given, I guess it's political, which I'm going to get to in a minute. Inherently, it's political in this fucking day and age. All art is political. Some would argue. Many would argue that. I studied that in college when I went to school to be an English teacher, taking education courses and philosophy courses and literary criticism courses and so on and so forth. There's a good argument that all art is inherently political. The very existence of art is political. The very existence of an artist is a political statement. So to what extent do politics on the world stage, be it local, national, international, dare I say, global and cosmic, spiritual, to what extent do those stages affect the inner stagings of our own fucking minds, the inner stagings of our own lives? This is what I've been really working on, I guess, in myself since I put the bottle down, because when I was drinking, it was like all about the outside world. So maybe there's a like a relationship there. Maybe I was just shunning the outside world. Maybe there's an artistic, what's that one Soundgarden song? Blow up the outside world. A lot of people, there's a certain attractiveness to self-destruction and nihilism and cynicism, all those negative isms in, metal and rock, grunge, a lot of music that I just love, and the fact that I love that music, it pulls something in me. My inner workings are augmented alchemically almost by the exposure to the sounds and what it does. I find it to be a beautiful thing, but beautiful things can be dangerous. So to what extent is that internalized? If you've got this artistic, romanticized idea, notion of, blow up the outside world, it's all anguish inducing, it's all dreary, it's all, I'm misunderstood, there's an alienation effect, and all of those things are like true. That's to me, that's the rub of it. That's the hard part. How do we mitigate that? Because those are true things. And how can you argue against some of them? The only way you can argue against them is with positivity. But you can't really argue positivity to a negative motherfucker. It just doesn't work. And these are things, I don't know, if I experience them, that means I'm not alone. I ain't that special. There's a lot of people out there that probably wrestle and tangle with these ideas, and to what extent they implement, as a man thinketh, so he is. Okay, that's true. So if these are the things you're thinking, what do you do with it? Well, how do they manifest in your actions and your behavior and your speech and your habits and all of these like super important, super fucking just important? I don't have any other better way to say it. Massive ideas that are super important to how you live on a day-to-day basis. And if how you live on a day-to-day basis creates your life, creates your weeks and months, and I don't know, is that your identity? Is that the detached metaphysical I, the quote unquote I, capital I, the ego, super ego, maybe? I'm not too sure. It's interesting though. It's very interesting to me. Am I what I do? What's that Aristotle quote? It's one Aristotle quote that I love. Virtue is not an act, but a habit. So, how does one become virtue? Does one embody virtue chronically over a period of time, or do you do one thing once and you're known by that? If we're known by our fruits, do you have one harvest? I don't know, man. That's the shit that I'm thinking about. Because the outside world can affect your inside world, and your inside world is going to dictate how you view the outside world. And we have to fucking interface with it. We can't just be reclusive, And I like to think I'm pretty social. I believe I'm far more social than many people on average. So if I'm going to be around other people, I better be coming correct. There's like a duty there. There's a duty to show up correctly and positive and helpful, useful in some sense of service, whatever the fuck that actually looks like. So I don't know. That's what I'm thinking about this fine Monday. I finished another book I finished, The Weight of Glory, a collection of essays by C.S. Lewis. I really, really enjoy reading C.S. Lewis. This one section from one of these essays on here, an essay called Membership. Now, the problem is, right now at least, that I'm wearing sunglasses. So I got to get a little closer to my phone to read this excerpt. Anyway, C.S. Lewis, in his essay called Membership, this is a quote that stuck out to me. He says, "A sick society must think much about politics, as a sick man must think much about his digestion. To ignore this subject may be fatal cowardice for one as for the other. But if either comes to regard it as the natural food of the mind, if either forgets that we think of if either forgets God damn it. If either forgets that we think of such things only in order to be able to think of something else, then what was undertaken for the sake of health has become itself a new and deadly disease." A sick society and a sick man. Okay, I understand that. A sick society must think of politics just like a sick man must think of his digestion. Stands to reason, going about your business normally, living a life. You don't really think about the natural functions, the necessary and natural and unconscious you don't have to think about digesting food. You just digest the food. In a healthy society, you ought not be completely given into the political workings of it. The politics are necessary, but they should be functional. They should be systematic. It shouldn't require the attention being paid to it every single day. The hyper fucking fixation, which gives way to the stress, which gives way to the hypnosis, which gives way to the fixation. And then the fucking cycle just goes, gets us in that stress response cycle. Dare I say a trauma response cycle. Yeah, that seems to be pretty accurate to me. Symptoms of a sick society. I'm going to reread that since I butchered it. A sick society must think much about politics, as a sick man must think much about his digestion. To ignore the subject may be fatal cowardice for the one as for the other. But if either comes to regard it as the natural food of the mind, if either forgets what we think of such things only in order to be able to think of something else, that what was undertaken for the sake of health has become itself a new and deadly disease. Because when you're sick, all you can think about is being sick. I know when I get sick, I'm a miserable piece of trash. I hate it. I just is what it is. If I'm laid up in bed, just deathly ill, I can't think of, my normal day-to-day life. Going to work out doesn't even compute. Going to work doesn't even compute. I try to do those things, but if I'm sick enough to be debilitated, that's like completely gone. All I'm thinking about is my digestion, my metaphorical digestion here. And then once it's back to normal, though, I don't have to think about it. What's the word? Like the predispositions of just obsession. All you can think about is that sickness when you're in the midst of it. And then when it goes away, you're cool. When the symptoms abate, on to the next layer of importance. C.S. Lewis is saying it's the same thing with politics, man. It's the same thing with these politics. And because society is so sick, that's all we're thinking about. But the only reason to have politics is to have a cohesive society, right? And in that cohesive society, we can think about next order, higher order levels of things that are worth thinking about, things that are worth doing. I found that very poignant. He continues, there is, in fact, a fatal tendency in all human activities for the means to encroach upon the very ends which they were intended to serve. Thus, money comes to hinder the exchange of commodities and rules. What the fuck's it say? Damn it, I hate when I do this. I took a bad screenshot. I can't read it. Thus, money comes to hinder the exchange of commodities and rules of art to hamper genius and examinations to prevent young men from becoming learned. The Procrustean bed, like I talked about the other day. When the means are unconductive to the end, there's a problem. That seems to be a sickness. And that's kind of what compels me to get out here and talk, to bring that full circle to what I was talking about in the beginning. You know, what do we do with it? We're obsessed with the sicknesses all around us, and they impact us. I mean, it's I'm not isolated from society. You know, the outside world. I would love to just be unaffected by what I observe and what compels me to pay my attention to it. You know, it's almost like it's a tax. You know, like you can't just not pay taxes. You can't be a what do they call it? A conscientious objector. Sir, I conscientiously object to paying my taxes. That's nice. We're gonna come get you. We will seize what is due to us. It doesn't really, like, you can't just, I conscientiously object and not pay attention to anything of it. But then when it actually trickles down into real world stuff, I mean, you know, grocery prices, for example, one of the low hanging fruit examples, you gradually notice these things. You gradually notice the political implications of stuff. So it's all political. It gives credence to that argument. And we're sick and we're worried about our digestion. I'm learning to mitigate that. That's the whole point of getting out here. You know, I'm sharing shit that I find is compelling and helpful in that effort, because that shit will just bring you down. We're being worried about sick. Now you're fucking just agoraphobic. Everything just makes you more sick. You know, you're that plastic wrapped individual. You can't wait to get on that Procrustean bed. You don't care if they got to stretch you out or hack off a couple limbs, you know? So what do? We worry about the inside world. And that's the whole point. That's why I like to wake up and take a nice walk. Because I get up nice and early, even though it's rainy today, and I'm tired as dog shit when I start. 20 minutes in, I'm all good, man. I'm wide awake. My brain is turning. I'm getting downloads. I'm fucking thinking clear. I'm feeling good. Heart rate's up. Body's a little warm. You know what I mean? That cold rain on my bald head, that feels great. Feels alive. To be alive rather than not alive. Increasing of the thumos. Then I come back in here and I read some good stuff. I finish a book. That's another one that right on my list of books I've read so far this year. Then I ease into another one. Yeah, man, I throw on some. I'm like a metal dude and a rock dude, a blues guy. I like a lot of rap. I put on some classical music on this fine Monday morning. I put on some classical music and just sit peacefully and read. Light up a candle. Got that nice fall autumn scent going through my crib. Yeah, this is a beautiful way to start my day, man. I ain't getting in no motherfucking Procrustean bed. Procrustus. You got slayed by the hero eventually, dog. And there's a hero in all of us, man. You know, we just got to chisel that shit out. It's another saying that I've always liked, you know, that man is marble, implying that, you know, you just got to sculpt whatever you sculpt into that block of marble, you know, nature versus nurture, whatever, you know, we're authors of our own fate to some extent. To some extent, you know, not completely. We don't get to dictate the world. We don't get to dictate reality, but we do get to kind of, you know, make decisions and have autonomy insofar as it regards our choices, what we do over a period of time. And as I've been sober and I think about all this stuff and try not to let the sickness of the outside world make me fucking sick, because I've been there too and it's a horrible place to be. You know what I mean? I try to just inch by inch, dude. Authority, authorship, autonomy, you know, they're all related. There's a lot to be said for that. Then I found this idea. I was listening to something the other day. I forget exactly what, but they were talking about, you know, just rising general trends societally in that outside realm, you know, because not all the outside realm is bad. If you're programmed negatively, all you see is the bad. That's the law of attraction right there. You negative motherfucker, all you're going to see is that negative shit out there. But if you're chilling, you're going to see the chilling stuff. And if you're happy and positive and productive and getting after it, that stuff's going to find you too. You'll meet in the middle. You're searching for it. It's searching for you. It will come together. I'm learning this to be true. But they're talking about how, you know, there's a re-enchantment with life that's kind of starting to happen. And it's a generational thing. It's a societal thing. It's a political thing. And I love that idea. Being re-enchanted with life. Because what's the opposite? What's the via negativa of that? Let's just say it's better to be re-enchanted with life or enchanted with life than what? Than disenchanted? Yeah. Hell yeah. And there's a lot of disenchantment going on as people are living their lives and what they offer in terms of sharing their life with other people. And I'm trying not to participate in that disenchantment, although it's part of my nature, which I'm unlearning anyway. So that's what I'm thinking about on this fine Monday. Shit, that's what I'm thinking about on this fine Monday. But since it's a fine Monday, that means it's a fine day to do chest, bench presses, chest flies, so on and so forth. Yeah, buddy. Thank you for hanging out with me on this fine Monday morning. This is the BS with B. Hannas YouTube morning show. That's me, Nikki B. Hannas. You can find this on YouTube. I go live on YouTube, which means I can't edit out when I butcher reading something. And I could take the shades off, but I won't. I won't do it. You can find this on YouTube, BS with B. Hannas. Good morning, B. Hannas. You can also find it on Apple Podcast, Spotify Podcast, iHeartRadio, I think. It's on Amazon Podcast too. Yeah, Spotify, Apple, Amazon. Yep. Anyway, you can go to, for my music, nickybhannas.com. I got all my music up there. You can download it if you'd like. Got all the lyrics up there if you want to see what I'm yelling about. Live videos, music videos, all types of cool stuff. If you want to see the stuff I write about, you can go to Substack. What is it? nickybhannas.substack.com, where I kind of philosophize on basic ideas I find interesting. If you want to see me play guitar, you can go to YouTube. There's another channel, Nicky B. Hannas. I got this cool little thing. I've been really enjoying doing it too. I just load up a backing track on YouTube and fucking just rip along to it. So there's a bunch of them up there, slowly adding more. And what else? I think that's it. I think that's the extent of the plugs. You can find it all on nickybhannas.com. All the links are out there. If you want to support, if you want to see all of the creative output condensed into one feed, patreon.com/nickybhannas. Yeah, that's it. Happy motherfucking Monday. Keep it real. I'm going to keep it moving out here. I'll tell you first, I done wrong. One love. I'm out. Peace.